Hi everyone, it's Karis. So today I wanted to talk about books and musicals because I am a massive musical theatre fan, as you can probably see by my poster here, and there is more up here as well. I've also got my t-shirt on that says "The show must go on," which features letters from lots of different current West End musicals. This was designed at the start of lockdown to support lots of different musical theatre charities and communities within the musical theatre world. So I thought it would be appropriate to wear for today's video. So I actually came across this tag on Charlotte from Coiny Reads' channel, and I will leave a link to her channel in the description. And this tag was created by Book Browsing Blog, and I'll leave a link to the original in the description as well. Apparently there was an earlier version of this tag that was made a few years ago, but this is a 2020 version, and it focuses on specific songs from the musicals and books that match with them. So I'm really excited to get into it. I just love musicals, as I've already said. I love them. It's up there with my top 3 loves: books, travel, musicals. That's probably it. So anyway, let's just get on with the video. I've got all of the questions here on my phone, so I'm going to look down to read them out. So the first prompt is Hamilton and the song is Satisfied. First of all, I can't believe how I've just gone on about how much of a big musical theatre fan I am, and I haven't seen Hamilton, and I haven't even listened to the Hamilton soundtrack. But anyway, the song is Satisfied, and the prompt is which book had an unsatisfying ending or needs a sequel. For this one, I'm going to go with a quite recent read, and I'm going to go with Good Girl Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. Now, I'm not saying that I wasn't satisfied with this book, because I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars and I actually really enjoyed it. However, the ending was quite quick, and I feel like there are a lot of loose ends, but I'm pretty sure there is going to be a sequel to this. I think it's going to follow the main character to university, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of these loose ends end up turning up there while she's studying, and she ends up getting pulled into some new mysteries that also incorporate some elements of this. So I wasn't wholly unsatisfied, but I would like to see where it's going to go next. The next prompt is Everybody's Talking About Jamie, which is a great musical, and the prompt is from the song Everybody's Talking About Jamie. And the question is, what is a really hyped book you want to read only because of the hype? Now, my answer for this is one that I've actually already started listening to on audiobook, and that is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I was just so intrigued by this book, and I had heard a lot of hype specifically about how amazing the audiobook was. So when I had 2 free credits in my Audible trial, I just knew that this book had to be one of them. I actually knew very little going into it other than the fact that it's about a band, and I actually still don't know where the plot's going to go from where I am now. I'm a few chapters into it, but I'm loving it so far. I'm definitely happy with the decision to listen to the audiobook because the full cast experience is amazing. The next prompt is Anastasia and the song Journey to the Past, and the question is name a book that features flashbacks or developed backstories. And for this one, I'm going to choose The Muse by Jessie Burton, which I read last year. This book has 2 alternate timelines. One is the 60s and one is sometime in the 1300s in Spain, and it follows a main character who somehow comes by this painting. You're sort of intrigued as to why the Spanish backstory plays into this and how these 2 storylines eventually come together. I wasn't sure when I picked this book up if I would enjoy it, because I hadn't really read anything for a very long time. Before that, I read mainly YA, and I've never really delved into much historical fiction before. But I really loved this book. I'm glad that I listened to my friend's recommendation to pick it up, and yeah, I thought it would be a good answer for the prompt because of the different storylines. Next is Be More Chill, which I haven't seen. I actually almost got tickets to see this like the week before lockdown happened and didn't, and now I really regret it because I'm pretty sure it's closed for good. The song is Michael in the Bathroom, and the question is, if you were escaping a party by hiding in the bathroom, what book would you take with you? Now, thinking logistically on this, when I go out, I like to take out the smallest bag possible because I'm prone to being clumsy and losing stuff, and I just know that I would lose something if I took more than the bare minimum out with me. So I probably wouldn't have room in my bag to have a full book. However, I do have my phone with me, and I could put the Kindle app onto my phone and I would probably read whatever was on my Kindle on my phone. So I actually charged my Kindle up for the purposes of this video to see what was on here, because I'm a big advocate for reading how you want to read, whether that be physical book, ebook, audiobook, books that you've bought, books that you've borrowed from the library, probably not books that you've stolen, but aside from that, you do you. However, I very rarely reach for my Kindle. I only really use it if I'm traveling and going to lots of different places where I wouldn't want to be carrying books that I've read around with me. So I use it when I went interrailing, and 2 years ago I went to Kyrgyzstan in Central Asia, to which people normally ask why. Because I wanted to, and I was traveling around various places and I just didn't want to have loads of read books with me, so I took my Kindle. And I actually think the last things that are on here are things that I downloaded around that time. So the last book on here is Genuine Fraud by E. Lockhart or Renegades by Marissa Meyer. Those are the top two. So the next prompt is 6. Can we just take a moment? Okay, thank you. It actually makes me emotional to think about it. That's really sad. This was literally the last thing that I did before lockdown, the day before we went into lockdown, or maybe 2 days before. I was at like the last showing of 6 before it all closed down, and thinking about it, like, I'm so grateful that I finally got to see it and got to see it before all of this happened. I just want to see it again so badly. I had tickets to the drive-through, 2 lots of tickets to the drive-through. Don't even mention the fact that the drive-thru was cancelled to me. Anyway, the song is Ex-Wives and the question is name a book that is a twist or retelling of a well-known story. And I don't really tend to read a lot of retellings, but the one that I had for this was Vendetta, or the Blood for Blood trilogy by Catherine Doyle, which is a trilogy that I read back in 2016/2017 and I absolutely loved. I'm pretty sure I have a full review for this on my channel that is actually still live, so if it is, I'll leave the link to that in the description. This isn't explicitly a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, I don't think, but it is very, very similar. And when you search the word retelling on Goodreads in like the reviews for the first book, there are a lot of people saying it's a retelling of Romeo and Juliet, so I'm going to count it for this question. So my memory of it is a little hazy, but what I do know is it follows a main character called Sophie, who basically is living a perfectly ordinary life, and then this big family which has a number of sons moves in, or moves to town. I can't remember if they move next door, but they definitely come into her life, and it turns out that this family is part of the mafia. I would recommend going and watching my review if you want to know more about it, because I realised I just did an awful job of summing it up. But honestly, this trilogy is so good and I would love to reread it. It was just so addictive. Next is The Last 5 Years, which I've actually only seen the film of. I've never seen the musical, but I really liked the film. The song is Still Hurting, and the question is what book hurt you and has stuck with you ever since? And for this one, I can only choose my favourite book of all time, The Book Thief by Marcus Zusak. I read this, it must have been 2012 or 2013 the first time that I read this. Oh my god, 7 or 8 years ago. Oh my god. But it's my absolute favourite book. I just love this. I love the film as well, everything about it. However, the ending is very, very sad and it hurt me on many levels, and I will never be able to forget it. The next musical is Come From Away, which is another fantastic musical, another one that I saw right before lockdown, and I'm so happy that I did. And the song is Me and the Sky, and the prompt is pick a book that features your dream job, real or fantastical. I sort of have 2 dream jobs. My first was to just work in publishing in general, and somehow that's what I've ended up doing. Amazing, I know. My other dream job was to be an author, and that is what I've wanted to do ever since I was a very, very little girl, and it's still a huge dream. But to achieve that dream, you actually have to, you know, write something. So, you know, working on it slowly. But I really struggled to think of a book for this. I'm sure there are things that I've read, but I just could not think of anything. Until I thought of How Do You Like Me Now by Holly Bourne. This was Holly Bourne's first adult book, and the main character in it is a quite well-known famous author. The next musical is Newsies, which I haven't actually seen, and the song is Santa Fe, and the question is what fictional place would you love to visit? Now this might be cheating because I haven't actually read this book, but I'm planning on reading in September a book called Tilly and the Book Wanderers, which is book 1 in the Pages & Co series by Anna James. Now I'm not sure if this takes place in a fully fantastical world, but basically it's about a girl who lives above a bookshop, and one day she starts realizing that all of her favorite characters from the book she's been reading are turning up in the bookshop, and she gets to meet them all. And I'm not sure if she then follows them into a fantasy land or if it all takes place in the surrounds of the bookshop and the girl's local area. I'm not sure, but how cool would it be to literally fall into the pages of any of your favorite books? So whatever world that book takes place in, that's where I want to be. The next prompt is Waitress, my other fave. Honestly, why do I get emotional speaking about my favourites? Waitress is the musical I've seen the most. I love it with all my heart. I can't think about it for too long because it's closed on the West End now, and I'm never going to see it again with Lucy Jones and David Hunter as Jenna and Dr. Pomatter. I am, however, going to see it twice on tour, but not until like literally right at the end of 2021, like November 2021. So we've got a lot of listening to the soundtrack to do before then. But the prompt for this one is the song When He Sees Me, and the question is, what book did you fall in love with the second you saw the cover? So what I've gone for is actually more of a collection than a specific book, but that is the Penguin English Library books, which are basically these really beautiful paperback versions of classics, and I think they're so pretty. I'm not like avidly collecting them in the sense that I won't just buy them from a bookshop, but if I see them like in a charity shop or something, then I will definitely pick them up. And if I am looking for a classic to buy, then I will tend to buy it in that version. The next prompt is Dear Evan Hansen, and the song is Disappear, and the question is hype an underrated book. It's very difficult for me to know what's underrated at the moment, having not really been on booktube that much in the past 3 years and having not really read that much in the past 3 years. However, I don't think I've seen anyone other than Lily from Lily Eleanor Reads talk about this book, and I looked on Goodreads and hardly anyone that I'm friends with on there has got it, so I'm gonna take that as the fact that it's underrated. And that is All the Things We Never Said by Yasmin Rahman. I think it's probably underhyped because it's UKYA, maybe it's not out in other countries, but I really enjoyed this book. It follows 3 teenagers who don't know each other at the beginning of the book. For their own individual reasons, each one of the girls wants to commit suicide, and because of this, each one of them joins this website which essentially creates a pact between strangers. It matches you to people to form a suicide pact with, essentially, and these 3 girls all get put together, and it follows their journey from there as their lives start to intersect, and the website becomes increasingly controlling over their day-to-day lives. I just found it really interesting to follow the journey that each one of these main characters goes on and see how their bond developed over the course of the book, and I thought the mental health representation was handled really well. However, obviously, as I said, there would be trigger warnings for depression, suicide and sexual assault from what I remember as well. So that's obviously just something to bear in mind before going into this book, but I thought it was worth mentioning in this tag because it is, in my opinion, very underhyped. The final musical is Legally Blonde. The song is What You Want, and the question is, what do you want to see more of in books? So one thing that I really want to see more books about is more books that are set at university, or just more books that feature characters like between the ages of sort of 19 to your early 20s. Maybe I just don't know the right things, but I just don't feel like I have read that many things, and I do genuinely think that not knowing about so many books that focuses on this time period in your life is one of the reasons why my reading really took a backseat over the past 3 years, because I was still enjoying reading YA, but I just was having some issues with connecting to a lot of the contemporary stories that I was reading in particular. But then adult books, a lot of them I just didn't know what I enjoyed, and I was finding that really difficult as well. And I just think it really would have helped if I knew of more books that were about characters who were my sort of age, maybe characters at uni, because that was the most recent experience that I'd had. The only examples that I can think of off the top of my head is obviously Fangirl, but that's a more American experience, which is obviously good if you're American, but not so relevant to me. I can think of Alice Oseman, obviously Loveless, that she's just released, centres around being in university. I can think of a book called Freshers by Tom Ellen and Lucy Iverson, which I'm currently reading at the moment actually. There is probably other stuff, but those are just all that I can think of off the top of my head. And then again, the next step of being in your early 20s, or you may not have gone to uni, just leaving education and being like, what do I do next? And all the changes that come then, because there are so many changes when you go off to uni, but then there are also so many changes when you leave uni, and I don't really think I was ready. And just having that represented in books, I think I would really like, and I would still really like to see it now. So that is my answer to that question. If you know anything that fits in with that general area, if you can make sense of it from the way I just explained it, then please let me know in the comments. I would love to know. I'm always on the lookout for stuff that focuses on the sort of stage of life that I'm at now and the stage just before it. And the tag does actually include a bonus question, and that is pick your favorite musical and recommend a book that reminds you of it. And I feel like I have the perfect answer for this question. As I said, I have 2 favorite musicals, but for this question I'm going to pick 6 because the recommendation fits perfectly. And my recommendation for a book or a series that you should read if you love Six is the 6 Tudor Queen series by Alison Weir. If you're interested in learning more about the backstories of each of the wives after having seen the musical, which I definitely was, then this series, I honestly can't recommend it highly enough. I have only read the first one, but I feel like they're all going to be as good, because the one thing that I was worried about is, as someone who's never read historical fiction before, I was really worried that I would hate this because I would find it very dry and I would find it very difficult to get through and very dense. And yes, it is a chunky book, it is long, I'm not going to sugarcoat that, but I found it very, very readable and very easy. The writing style was very accessible, but I also felt like I learned so much, and I feel like it's actually stuck. I know more people in Tudor history now after reading this than I feel like I ever have before, and I'm just so excited to continue on with the series. I would definitely recommend this series to anyone who loves Six. You can't go and see it at the moment, so why not swat up on the wives, so when you're back you'll know exactly what each of them has been through. So that was the musical theatre book tag. I hope you enjoyed it and enjoyed seeing me fangirl over some of my very, very favourite musicals. If you like musicals, then please do this tag and let me know in the comments and I will go over and watch it. Other than that, I hope you're all doing really well and staying safe and keeping well, and I will see you again next time. Bye!